Have you ever wondered what hypnosis might be and what it can do for you? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Hypnosis Everywhere with your host, Inez Simpson. This is the show that talks to everyone, from the experienced practitioner to the cautiously curious, and yes, even the skeptics. Now, here's Inez Simpson.
Well, hello and welcome to our show today, Hypnosis Everywhere, and I'm Inez Simpson, and I have my sidekick, Martin Gover, here with me. Say hello, Martin.
Hello, Martin.
And we have our great guest today, and his name is Dan Cleary. Now, the show today is titled, what is it titled?
Breaking Through the Pain Barrier.
Breaking Through the Pain Barrier. But you know what?
Never mind that.
Doesn't matter. What happens is we had another show called that. So this one got called the same thing, and it's not right. So anyway, doesn't matter. We are going to be talking about pain in a different way from a different point of view today.
Dan's shaking his head. He's not going to be talking about
You're not going to be talking about that, Dan? You are so. Anyway, we're just going to welcome Dan, and he's just going to tell us what he's going to talk about and tell us about himself right now. Thanks, Dan. Come on.
Yes, well, it is definitely not whatever the title was, Breaking the Pain Barrier. No. I saw that and I thought, well, just keep your mouth closed.
No. We don't want you to. We want a little controversy. We want a little bit of stuff. Go ahead. I want you to first tell people about how you came to hypnosis and a little bit about your belief system around hypnosis and how you look at it, because that's what I'm wanting, not me.
No, you really don't want my belief system.
Well, okay, let's just get going though, because we only don't have a lot of time. What kind of languaging was that?
We only don't have just a second. We have plenty of seconds. So I got into hypnosis as a down the road after effect of a motorcycle wreck that caused partial paralysis. And my injury is called brachial plexus avulsion, which is very painful. My right arm and part of my face and part of my right side are paralyzed. A lot of pain, 24/7. People say, how can you be in pain if you're paralyzed? Well, all I know is the experience. For 5 years, I did not sleep in the conventional sense. I would be up for 36, 48 hours at a time. I would collapse for 3 or 4 hours and wake up in tears. I eventually went to a hypnotist, even though my HMO had told me literally that it was voodoo and they would not cover it. And I got there, and whatever took place in the first session, I was absolutely convinced that hypnosis did not work, but it reminded me of my meditation days. And so I worked on it myself, and within a week, I was sleeping 6 to 8 hours a night. And I kept developing my own skills with that. Mind-body connection. In fairness, the hypnotist that I went to was also a psychiatrist. And he took me down a long set of steps into a cave. And I like sunshine and sailboats. And he's going 20, 19, and I'm like at the bottom of the steps waiting for him. Da-da-da. So, this is where technique and scripting really has to be adapted to the individual. I think scripts are great. You go home and read them in your spare time, and then when you're speaking with people, you will find, scripts are really good because they're this format. And they help you to improve your language skills. But when you speak or listen with with the people that you're working with, they will tell you how they construct their reality.
Yeah.
And that's where scripts come from. So for me, it's listening to the client and using what they've got because they already know that trance.
Yeah.
And in most cases, the trance they're working is working really well, but it's the wrong script.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the core was mistaken. I can't instead of I can.
Mm-hmm.
So at any rate, so I was playing with this myself and getting more relief from that in a couple of days than I had gotten in 5 years of mainstream medical attention. I stopped taking all my the painkillers and cut back on my alcohol use and started participating in life again. As I was going on, one of the things, my right arm is paralyzed. I had been a carpenter. And so my career was kind of shelved. And in order to learn to be left-handed, I did what anybody, just the most sensible thing. I went out and bought a sailboat that needed to be rebuilt. And I rebuilt it left-handed. And once it was rebuilt, I had to take it somewhere. And I was living in Virginia at the time. And so I ended up in the Caribbean and working in boat yards and different places around the Caribbean and South Florida. And I was in South Florida and having my boat hauled out to do some work on it. And the guy who was running the travel lift, a travel lift is this big, ginormous thing that it lifts up a boat. My boat was 34 feet, and it lifts up the boat out of the water, and you drive it across land and park it and set the boat up. And the guy who was driving it was telling me before he started to work on my boat how bad his back was, that he had hurt his back, construction sites and places, boat yards, people strain themselves on a daily basis. So I sat up on top of the diesel engine of this big thing while he's driving it, and I was talking to him about how to lift my boat with care. And I was really just telling him stories about straightening his own spine and feeling better and how he could do it effortlessly. And by the time he parked the boat, he said, my back is better. I feel, that's hypnosis. I said, no, there were no steps involved. And he said, and I denied it. That's not hypnosis. Hypnosis is walking down 20 steps into a dark cave. No. He says that, and you should get paid for it. And I said, oh. And within a week, somebody came by and told me that there was a hypnosis course starting. So I went and took the course. Mm-hmm. That's how I got into it.
Anyway, you've got another whole minute to finish off this talk before we have to go to break.
Okay. There's not really much to say except that most people misunderstand pain.
And I think that's I'm just going to say one thing here I've always thought that you walk the walk and talk the talk. And part of it is because you are who you are with the discomfort that you have in your body. And everything about it, what you do is astounding to most people. And that's what I really want to get across to the audience is how astounding you are. And they could be just as astounding.
Yes, absolutely. And during the break, I'll look up the word as how do you spell it?
Astounding, yes. Okay, so we're just going to go to break here, and we're going to come right back after break, and we'll get into how you look at hypnosis and how you work with people with pain. Thanks.
Okay.
See you on the other side.
Okay.
All clear. Great first segment here. When Mark was trying to talk, I couldn't really hear him. I don't know if that's his mic.
Martin? Oh,
Martin,
Martin
I'm
was trying to talk? Oh,
You can
okay.
ignore me. Can you hear this now?
Can you hear us?
Yep. What was that? Sorry. I
Martin was talking. Did you hear him?
Say a couple words. Say a
1,
couple
2, 3,
words.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Test, test, test.
Yeah, it still sounds really distant.
What if you got it on
Let's
the
try.
wrong? How's that? No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6,
There we
7.
go.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you.
As long as you can still hear me.
Yeah, no, you both sound good.
That's the key.
Yeah. There was just a couple words at the beginning when you introduced him. I was like, I couldn't hear him at all. So
Okay,
just
great.
Okay, I was just
No
swearing.
worries.
So I think it was swearing words.
that's
Okay.
fine.
We'll see you on the other. So Dan, this is what the Facebook Live people now get us listen us argue and do things like that. So when we come
They're
back,
watching us now, right?
yes, so there's no escape here.
Well, I won't say anything nasty about me.
So usually when we used to do the program, we had those 2 minutes or 3 minutes we could do. I could say to you, Dan, what is it you want me to do? Do you want me to say something special? But now I just
Everything
say,
you say is special, dear.
so what we're just going to do is I'm just going to let you go because you are great and you can just talk about what you need to talk about, and including, the way you look at it and your percents,
Well,
10% solution, et cetera. Just go for it.
The challenge with that is that I look at it and think that it's really simple.
I know I do similar stuff, and Martin says I have to smarten up because people out there don't always understand.
Explain the simple.
Because the simple, to me, it's because we've done it for so long, it seems so normal and simple. And it's not always easy to go back to that part where you were still walking down those stairs to that cave and, knowing that visualizations don't work for everybody, and they don't work particularly if you don't use the right ones for the right people and all those things. But I do like the way you look at things, and I like the way you...
Alrighty. I'm so sorry to interrupt. We are coming back here, guys.
Okay. Anyway, we'll let you talk then.
You're listening to Hypnosis Everywhere, the Simpson Protocol. To reach the show today, please call into 1-866-472-5792. That's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to Inez, that's INES, at InezSimpson.com. Now, back to this week's program.
Well, welcome back to Hypnosis Everywhere with Inez Simpson and my guest, Dan Cleary, and my sidekick, Martin Gover. So what I really want to talk to you about now is that I'm traveling around Germany, and luckily for me, Dan is in Germany too. Not that it would make much difference, but the time frames are the same. So I'm in my house here where my trainer that teaches Simpson Protocol lives, and I'm here by myself, but we do have a little dog. So if you hear a little bark, just say that's just the audience, and it's just fine.
Deutsch barking.
Yeah,
Deutsch
and it'll
barking.
be in German. So anyway, back to Dan. And Dan, I'd like you to just keep going. You were really talking about how you came to hypnosis. Now, maybe I'd like you to now move on how you look at it and how you help people. The first thing you say to a client, maybe start with that.
Wow, I don't know what I first say to a client.
You wrote it here. Say the 10% solution. The first thing I say to a client.
Oh. Do I really say that? What if what?
Don't know. I'd say it made sense to me.
I generally ask them what the hell they came to see me about.
Yes. That's usually the first thing.
Yeah,
Anyway, when you get into it.
Did we have an appointment? Where are you? Even before 10% is, and I found being in Germany for this past while here and learning German, I'm finding even more interesting that language, which has always been one of my favorite things to play with, doesn't always translate.
Mm.
And there are things that you can say in English that you cannot say in German. And I'm I'm fairly certain that there must be things in German that you can't say in English. But the key that I'm looking for is that I'm not looking to manage pain.
Mhm.
I am looking to find relief and ways of accessing relief. Managing pain is work. People who live with a chronic condition have enough work on their table as it is. Just maintaining. A friend of mine was asking me when they saw the announcement of this program to talk about my experience and how, because they have taken several classes with me, and I've known them socially at, like you, at the conferences, and they said, we didn't know for years that you're still experiencing painful situations because you don't express it. And this is the difference between relief and management. I'm lazy. And when I'm working with my clients, I want to be lazy with them as well. I would rather, we were talking about the mindset and all that. I would rather work with their story than try and teach them mine. How we work, people who live with a chronic condition develop what I call chronic identity. And chronic identity is the same as any other identity, except you've got this extra little chunk of stuff that travels along and interferes with your life on some level. When you have 24/7 painful signals in your body that are no longer giving you new information,
Mm-hmm.
then they are interfering. And when we learn to put them aside so that they don't interfere, I don't know, if your listeners, which of them have children or grandchildren or anything like that. But if you can imagine children when they're very young and they're in the next room and it's Saturday or Sunday morning and they're jumping up and down on the couch and they're playing the TV full volume, and and they're screaming and yelling and having fun. Mom and dad are sitting in the kitchen having a cup of coffee, reading the paper, thinking what a nice quiet morning it is. This is parental deafness. If something happens with one of the kids where they need attention, there's a button somewhere in the parental mind that goes, oh, that's different. That needs my attention, and zip. When we consider the signals that are painful signals in our life as though they were children in the next room, we can hear the noise, we can hear the distractions, but they don't interfere with our life. If there's a new signal that you need to pay attention to, you will be aware of it. But the rest of the time, you can go ahead with your life. This is a part of developing this skill, or just finding the skill in your life, because it's all, for anyone who's had children knows exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I've never had children. I've had a couple of kids that I call my not children, who I was very close to their family or that kind of thing, and nieces and nephews and stuff. When we learn about parental deafness and apply it in a different area of our life, we're using skills. And my job as a hypnotist is to find the skills that they have that can be used in new ways, rather than trying to teach them a whole new concept. So we step away from the helplessness of this noise, this constant noise. I can't concentrate with all this noise going on, these signals, and say, you know how to ignore children, don't you? Oh, yeah. And then there's, you mentioned the 10% solution. And one of my favorite things with clients is they'll come in and they begin to tell me their story. And I don't really want to know a lot of the detail. I want to know the framework. I want to understand the general thing, but I don't need a lot of the detail. And I say, well, would it be a good thing in your life if I could guarantee you 100% relief today in this office, right here, right now? Oh, yeah. Think about it for yourself. Yeah. Well, that's probably not going to happen. And think about it. I don't know if you've had any chronic conditions or know people who, I'm sure you've known people with them. For years, they've been going to doctors and therapists, and they are given a pill or a therapy or an approach and said, come back and see me in 2 weeks. And they come back and they say, are you still in pain? Well, yeah. But, and the question isn't, are you feeling better? It's, are you in pain?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. And they may be overlooking 50 or 60% improvement. And so I say, if I could guarantee you 100%, would that be a good thing? Yeah. It's probably not going to happen. I've seen it happen. But, it's been 2 to 6 years by the time most people come to see me from the onset of their situation. Because, frankly, hypnotists are not in the leading edge of, well, I should go see a hypnotist. Usually it's, I have a lot of pain, I'm going to go see a doctor. So when they come and they've been through all these other therapies, and I say, well, probably not going to happen. How about 50%? Would that be a relief? Yeah. I said, what could you do if you had 50% relief today that you don't feel like you could do before you came in? Well, I'd be able to sit up at dinner for an hour and a half, or I'd be able to go to a restaurant and have dinner out where it's going to be a couple of hours and sit around with my friends. And okay, how about 25%? What could you do then? And they say, well, I'd really like to get more. I said, well, just, go with me. And at 25 or 15 or 25%, when they say, I could play with my children or my grandchildren, I could work in my garden, because that always makes me feel better. But I have difficulty bending over, or my hands hurt. I said, okay, so when we have that, what I'm doing is reframing their expectation. When they were looking for relief in the past, or they were looking for not having pain, they could have gotten 50% relief. But the question was, are you still in pain? The answer is yes. If the question had been, what comforts do you have now that you didn't have before? Or how do you, tell me about your level of comfort rather than your level of pain, then they could respond and go, actually, I feel a little better. When we reframe this, then we've changed the expectation. Now, can you imagine, middle of the night, you get up, got to go to the bathroom, and you're kind of going along in the dark and shuffling along and stub your toe, and you're jumping up and down, screaming silently so you don't wake the rest of the house. Can you imagine this? Think about this, how this would be in you. What else is going on in your body? That's a question.
Oh, you're asking me what else is
no,
going on?
I'm asking.
I think we should ask Martin that. What else is going on in your body?
Hypothetical question.
So he's
Everything's
supposed to answer. What else you notice in your body when you stub your toe?
Am I peeing down
No.
my leg or no?
No, he's stubbing his
Depends on
toe.
your level of urgency.
Yes. And usually it's
I don't
it's
know.
how you pay attention to the toe stubbing.
That's all I notice is the pain in my toe.
That's all he notices would be the pain in his toe.
I bet you a nickel
Mm-hmm.
that your hands get real tight, your shoulders get real tight.
Right.
Yeah.
And especially since you're trying to not wake up the whole house. all those other
Let's keep it going.
referred muscle tensions are not part of the problem.
Right.
And if you forget and keep reacting as though the stub toe were, because a chronic signal is like a stub toe, only it keeps going and going and going.
Mm-hmm.
When you tighten up the rest of your body and forget that the only thing is the toe, and the ottoman is probably not going to attack again.
No.
You know? And so we learn to relax the rest of our body so that we are responding to what is going on instead of reacting to an event that took place before.
Yeah.
In my case, I have torn nerves.
Yes.
And so both sides of the tear are working fine. And they are screaming at me because they can't talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's other ways, more scientific ways to say
Yeah.
that, but that's basically the situation. When we learn to change the experience from just the toe, just that signal, it's not a threat to the rest of our body. We come out of fight or flight.
Yeah.
And when I speak with somebody about the 10% solution and get them down to a point where they can go 25% relief, I could do this and this and this, then I say, okay, for now, forget about all that. I'm curious to play with your imagination.
Dan, can I stop you there? Because we need to go to break. And when you come back, I want you to continue that, please.
Okay, before you go to break,
Yes.
real quick, while you're on break, while everybody out there is on break, imagine what you might do when you feel better now.
Thank you. And off we go to break. Thanks.
All right, you're clear.
Thank you. Okay, so now we got 2 minutes or so. So no do. I think that's great. And the toe thing is a very great analogy because I know that's what you do. You stub, but there's also the whole attitude after the toe stubbing.
Well, there's self-recrimination. How could I be so stupid? Or that darned ottoman attacked me. How did it? How dare it jump out of the corner like that and attack me?
So we're sort of compounding our own. Yeah.
Chronic identity.
Yeah, but even a simple toe stubbing and not attached to it really does define it because you start to say, well, why did I do that? Or, well, that's just the whole day's just going to shot, and you start to become, you're such a klutz and on it goes. And, that's just enough if you're thinking about that just being just the toe stubbing. When you do have a chronic identity, how much it could be.
Yeah. And, here again, also, and we might touch on this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love where you were going, though. So we'll just go from where you were because I think it's...
Remember?
Huh? I don't know. I think you're a little bit better than I am at that. I mean,
I don't listen.
I know. And what? We sort of tend to be people that go with the flow. So we're talking and people will interrupt me when they're doing translations or something. And when they come back, I don't even know where I was. Okay. What was I talking about?
I have a fun one on that, on translations. I figured a way to eliminate the difficulty with translations.
What? Teaching English only?
No, in session work.
Oh, in session work.
Yeah.
Mm.
And in training. Training, it's not as, it's interesting.
Are you going to tell us the secret?
No, he's not going to tell us.
Oh, you expect me to tell you these?
All right, here we go. Coming back.
Hold on.
See, that's why I wasn't telling you.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that...
You're listening to Hypnosis Everywhere, the Simpson Protocol. To reach the show today, please call into 1-866-472-5792 That's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to Inez, that's INES, at InezSimpson.com. Now, back to this week's program.
And so, Inez,
welcome back and to Hypnosis Everywhere. And we're going to get right back to Dan because we need to keep going. No laughing now, Dan. Just keep going, please.
I'm sorry. I can't stop laughing. Well, I mean, you telling me the secret to life there on the break, I mean, that just solved everything for me. And I'm so happy to know all those details now. And the world is a better place. Too bad it didn't go out over the air.
Troublemaker, and just as much as my sidekick is, between the two of you, it's not easy to keep control here. Not that I need it. Who needs
control? The
it's
idea
a total illusion, right? We know that. That's a whole other subject. Let's go back to where you were.
Well, in a way, it ties in because the control is recognizing the difference between what you feel and how you feel about what you feel, which is kind of where we left off with the analogy of the toe stubbing and chronic identity and the 10% solution. When we begin to recognize the difference between the signals that we experience, and I use signals, not pain. Mm-hmm. Pain, the word pain hurts. Ow! Yeah, it's supposed to. It's a very descriptive word. It's a great word. And it's got a lot of associations, and all of them are wonderful because pain is a good signal to say, take your hand out of the fire. Yeah. Not so good if your hand is not in the fire and it's still saying the same message, which is going on in my situation. Excuse me. So when I'm speaking with people and I talk to them about the 10% solution, and I say, okay, so when I get to the level that they can recognize an improvement in their life at 10 to 25%, somewhere in there, that they would be able to play with their grandchildren or go out to dinner or sit through a movie or do their gardening or the things that they enjoy in life. Once they go, oh, yeah, okay, I can see that. I say, okay, well, forget about that for a minute. First, I want to play, play with your imagination. And if they, my favorite thing for a resource is finding things in their life that they love. And the overall 100% best one I've ever found is grandchildren. Now, I was teaching a group of doctors years ago, and this one doctor was very right there on everything I said. And I was talking about, when you speak to people about their grandchildren, they're almost without fail, their eyes light up because you can have issues with your kids. But when you have grandchildren, they can do no wrong. I mean, that's unconditional love. So when I say, do you have children or grandchildren? Oh yeah, I've got a little Tommy. He's 4 years old. Oh, grandchildren are great, aren't they? Yeah. And how old? Oh yeah, and they tell me that. And what color is his hair? And what I'm doing is asking the details and helping them to get into the experience of their grandchildren. I said, if it's easier for you to remember all those little things about your grandchild with your eyes closed or open, it doesn't matter. And they go in and they show me their resource. And then I will help them to anchor how it feels to feel that unconditional love. And 3, 2, 1 or some other signal or whatever they make up. And then I'll ask them to come back to full alertness here in the room and say, by the way, you remember that thing you came in about? And they say, yeah. What's that? How has that changed? I said, well, I feel better. So we don't actually need to, once we get the difference between what they feel, the signal, and how they feel about it, separate the toe stub analogy, that the referred pains from the actual signals that are chronic in their life, then bring them into an experience that they express that they really love. I mean, I live in Florida most of the time, and there I get a lot of people that are into outdoor sports because, well, you can go outdoors without dying most of the year. And so for some, it'll be scuba diving or sailing or whatever it is. But when I'm working with people that have grandchildren, it's guaranteed to be successful. We've changed the way they look at their situation. When they do this, we get at least 35 to 50 or 60% relief in the first session. And because I knocked it down with the 10% solution, instead of expecting 100% relief and wondering whether, oh, this didn't work, I still hurt, they say, my goodness, I feel better than I've felt in years. I had a woman break down and begin crying. I thought she was going into an abreaction. And I was like, oh God, here we go again. She drama. And she says, no. It's been 5 years and I've never felt this comfortable. And it's just stunning how effective this can be. So I don't know where we are.
Well, that's good. And I really think that's great. So even what you've told us to the general population, it gives them some idea on how to shift their way of thinking a little, right? Even in general, without going, we obviously would love them to go see you or someone else that it does work with this kind of work. But even the fact that all they do is start to shift their thinking, you've managed to do that for them already today, right? They were just sitting there pretending to be your client, and you just got them to do what you wanted them to do.
Yeah, and the people listening that have dealt with chronic issues in their life can take a moment and think about or notice the way they feel.
Yeah.
And, they don't need, you said, people come see me. I can work on a telephone. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's communication.
Mm-hmm.
And it's helping them to step out of the habit communication that has been limiting them in the past. Many of the therapists that claim to work with pain management talk about, well, all pain is emotional. And if and to me, that's putting a lot of blame on people for being in pain. All experience has emotional aspects.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that the cause was emotional.
No,
I have physical nerve damage. I did a swan dive over the handlebars of a motorcycle at 30 or 40 miles an hour and tore nerves out of my spine. This is not, somebody asked me at a conference once, oh, I'll take you back to a past life and we can do regression to cause. And I said, the cause was hitting the pavement at 30 miles an hour with my arms.
I agree. Those sort of things that are caused by that, definitely the emotional content comes after, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
so I think that when we're working with people, when you're living your life, when you're taking a moment, keep in mind that when I say this is easy, this is simple. Simple doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy.
No.
And there is no approach so simple that it cannot be complicated by an expert.
How much time have we got, Martin?
You could ask the engineer.
Engineer, how much time have we got?
To the end of the show.
To the end of the show.
That's 300 years?
Yeah. That's
Wow.
Just keep talking.
10 minutes? Really? Oh my goodness.
Oh, fantastic. That's great.
Okay. So
going more on the emotional content.
mhm.
The way that we experience, you mentioned when I was talking about stubbing your toe, how you start self-recrimination and all this, and then you get some expert that comes along and says, well, you should know better than to walk in the dark, Look, I know the laws on murder in this state, so you're safe for the moment, but don't push it.
Yeah.
I find that when people talk about the only thing that you need to do is release it into the past, basically don't understand. There's a lot more to it, because there are aches and pains and chronic conditions that are solely instigated by emotional content. But to assume that all chronic conditions are therefore emotional is a mistake. You have a question? I can hear it.
No, I was just going to say it's true. I know that many things from when I work with people is caused by emotional contact, but the kind of things that are caused by a traumatic accident or something like that start in a different...
You can't use the word accident. No.
No.
I have been scolded. I have changed my language. This is going to language. Oh, and that's another topic I want to touch on. Mm-hmm. In the past, I would say, in 1978, I had a motorcycle accident. People say, "Oh, there are no accidents. Everything's..." And it's like, okay. In 1978, I had a motorcycle wreck.
Yeah.
And if you come after me about my language for accident, you're going to have an accident, and it won't be an accident. Language.
Okay, let's talk about language, because we probably don't have that much more time.
10 minutes or so.
Yeah, we got about 8 minutes left or something.
Well, let's figure out how much. Let's spend 2 or 3 minutes figuring out how much time we have. One of the things that I found, especially lately, but I have always stressed the use of language. I think back when we first met, one of my courses, and it may have been, I think the first class that you took of mine was Changing Pain.
Yeah.
And I had another class around that time, the Language of Success.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to spell NLP. So I have taken classes in it, and the first time I took one, the instructor asked me where I had taken my previous NLP training. And I said I didn't know what it was. I just walked into the room. Language is a very powerful tool. And the thing I find interesting of late is that I'm changing my view on it. It's still a powerful tool, but I was overlooking the most powerful way to use language, and that is that it changes. My language can't change you. If I use my really clever, all my NLP, all my tricks, They fly right past you. I had a client come. I was out in the street and walking around doing something, shopping or something, and I ran into this person that had been a client 6 months or a year before, and the person came up to me and said, "Wow, man, that session it was just so good, and seeing you changed my life forever." And I'm thinking, "Oh wow, I am really cool." Then I think. Oh, and I remember that session because this one's a real dogger. I said, "Oh, you mean when I said session?" And he said, "No, I never did figure that out." But as I was leaving, you told me about this restaurant up the street that you were suggesting, because I asked you where I could get something to eat. I went in and I met my fiance, and that's how it changed my life. So what we say it's very cool and very important and can go right past the client. What it does, guaranteed, is it changes the practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
When I use my language, part of my training is what I call wax on, wax off training, which is speaking, using my skills in daily life. Mm-hmm. And you've seen me do this. You've seen me in classes and stuff, and in bars at the conventions, and getting trance when somebody's, just sitting there. What language does is it changes me. And when it tunes me into being more aware and more connected to you, then it enhances our relationship.
Sorry.
And as a famous person once said, that's all I have to say about that.
Well, I have to say then that's probably all the time we have too. So we got, I only got about 3 or 4 minutes left to close, and coming next week, because we sort of went out, we got them to keep a breakout so we could finish that. That's great. And I really thank you. And I actually don't want you to go away because I want to finish the Facebook Live thing with you a little bit. But I also really thank you because like you said, I've seen you. And I think, when we talk about NLP, that language, but you are Mr. Language, because NLP or not, whatever it is, you live the talk, you walk the walk. And I love you, and I'm glad that you came on, and I maybe like you to come on again sometime. So I'm now just going to ask everybody just to know that I love this man, and we're going to go now. I only have a few minutes, so what are we going to do here? In the next few minutes, I want to know first that next week, I'll tell you what was coming next week first in case I run out of time. We have Nick Abdun coming on, and he's from the UK, and he runs the UK convention. What I like about Nick Abdun is that he brings people together in all styles of hypnosis and gets them to get along, which is a major thing, because that this show has always been about that hypnosis everywhere, and I consider hypnosis everything, and I talk to you about what you do hypnosis every day by yourself and all those things. But ultimately, it's for you to find the right kind of hypnotist that you like, that works with you, that makes each person different styles of hypnotists work much better for different styles of people. And there's no such thing as the only way and the right way, because they're all right. So,
except mine.
Except yours, Ron. Yeah. Well, yours is better, I think. So I think mine is better, but it's only better for me. Do you understand? It's better for me because it's my style. Dan's better because it's better for him. So I want you to understand as a listener that I am promoting hypnosis, not just my hypnosis or Dan's hypnosis, but everyone's. And that's what Nick's doing. So next week we get to talk to Nick Abdun, and then he runs the UK convention, and we'll have an interesting time with that.